in my years of competing, my last year, I had a doctor talk to me, and he said, why do you eat so much protein? And I said, well, doc, I got to stay big, got to, hold on to this muscle, put on some more. He said, okay. He said, well, what do you eat?
All right, 1, 2, 3, and. All right, so Short Circuit, a little spinoff of the Circuit podcast at which me, Elijah Shaw, because I'm never around, I'm going to do my own little mini podcast, and I decided that I could, since I'm doing a podcast, I could bring my friends up. And so, good morning. This is Elijah Shaw, and this is the Short Circuit podcast. Today, I have a special guest. What I want to do is I want to bring someone up that I talk to all the time, either offline or in the NABA Protector app. And inevitably, our conversations revolve around health and fitness. So I'd like to introduce Levar Adams. He's the CEO of Defense and Logistics, LLC. I'm bringing him up here because I consider him a health and fitness guru. And in fact, we even call him a nerd sometimes, but I think he'll agree with that as well. So Levar, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, sir?
I'm doing really well. So Levar, I want to bring you up again because we have these conversations about fitness either in the app or in person here. And my first question to you is, on the circuit, we kind of do this little introduction every time. So I got 3 quick fire questions. And what I like you to do is, you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about them, but just give me your answers, first thing that comes to your head, and then we'll jump into the meat of the conversation. Sound good?
Cool.
All right. So first question is, name one thing that you would change about the industry.
Available information.
Tell me what you mean.
I guess our industry, in my opinion, is still somewhat of a closed industry. You don't have as much or as many resources, until, of course, you came along with a lot of, information. There's not a lot of information out there that you can, grasp or obtain. So I would say, more information for those that are trying to get started in the business. I
get that. And now, name one thing you love about the industry.
One thing I love about the industry, your ability to help people. I like to help people.
Okay. All right.
It gives me the ability to help people, whether it's on the protection side or I'm actually giving information to someone. I'm always helping people.
I see that. And now the third one, and this one's a little bit out of left field, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to name one person, past or present, living or dead, that you would like or would have liked to have provided protective services to.
One person.
Yeah, I knew that was a tricky one.
Yeah. Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson. All right. See, there we go. That's a good one. So what I plan to do is collect all these answers, because we've had everybody from Jesus Christ to Nelson Mandela to Tony Soprano. But what I like to do is one day get everybody back and just kind of unpack those answers. All right, Levar. As I mentioned, I call you the fitness and nutrition guru, yes, but I should give a backstory to some of our listeners here. So, how did you get in the profession, and specifically, how did you blend that with your, I think it's a passion for fitness and nutrition?
I started in 96, 97. Of course, played sports all through high school, ran track. I was a state champion in wrestling, 2-year state champion, my junior and senior year, and football, track, wrestling, and even played golf last year. Just needed something to do. So looking to go to college, I wanted to play in the pros. I guess I wasn't quite, good enough to make it. But my background in bodybuilding was something from my father. My father was actually a big-time competitor in bodybuilding. And I'm following in his footsteps. I went to the local gym in my area to get a job. And the gym of the year was Lee Haney's Universal Fitness. Mr. Haney is the world's greatest 8-time Mr. Olympia.
Sure.
So I worked for him and started off just as a floor person to kind of help and assist, sign up people for memberships. And from there, I started doing personal training. I actually left college. Mother was very upset that I switched from computer engineering, computer science, and I wanted to go into health and fitness. My first thing was being a physical therapist. I wound up being a physical therapist assistant, and a personal trainer. Started my business in Lee Haney's gym as a personal trainer, and then I wound up being his operations manager of 2 locations in Atlanta. So from there, I started competing. I competed from '97. My last year, I retired in 2011. I was a top-ranked national competitor, NPC competitor, on my way to receive my IFBB Pro card, and that's where my story started.
Okay, all right, and with that piece, in terms of the physical fitness and the understanding of anatomy, etc., you then made your way into protective services. Yes,
I actually was working in the gym. Of course, artists and entertainers work out too, and somebody saw me and said that this is a huge guy. So I kind of got in just based on, I guess, my size. Someone saw me and wanted me to accompany him on some frequent performance, and then I got asked to go on tour with an artist, and that was my introduction. So really, it was my look, my size, because at the time, the person with the muscle was always the best thing.
Sure.
And of course, that that's not true, but that was my start in the industry.
So it was the physicality that basically got you into the industry.
Yes.
And then I'm sure you hit him with the professionalism, etc. But one of the things that I know you for is that now you have your own agency. You've been in the business. You work with some great people in terms of other protectors. You came highly recommended by one of my close friends, Mark James. But one of the things I know you for is that you have this a deep understanding of the body, and you're able to translate that into how protectors can utilize these things to kind of make them more effective and give them more long-term time in the industry.
Yes.
And so, I mean, was this just a philosophy that you kind of came up with yourself in terms of, hey, what works for me? Or were you, did you stumble upon this? Tell me what your thought process was.
For myself, of course you use yourself. And just, with different clients, I've worked with so many different clients, from the nutritional aspect. And then, working with clients, most clients, they have jobs, they got to work. So, just hearing things as far as, well, at my job, I stand a lot. I want to do something to help me, increase, endurance, because, if you're standing a lot, you need endurance, in order to, do your job. Or maybe I sit down at work, all day. I need something to help me because I'm not burning energy. I'm sitting in place. I'm stagnant. So what are some things I can do? So I took, my clients and, with the many people I've worked with over the years, and then, kind of put it in place for what we do as protectors every day, because we stand, we sit, we move a lot, so everything in dealing with clients, I can take a little bit of each client and put into our industry as far as what we do. So that's how I pretty much come up with, the magic,
Sure. So, I mean, it goes without saying that physical fitness is important to the EP professional. And I do think, and sometimes I could be critical of the industry as a whole because they pay a lot of lip service to it, and you see guys that say that, but can they run up a flight of stairs? Can they carry the luggage from the car without getting winded? Or heaven forbid, can they stop an attack? And the things they say out of their mouth combined with the reality of the physicality, sometimes they tell a different story.
Yeah.
So we know it's important. I think everyone would agree. But my question is, in life, particularly if you're busy or if you're not, bad habits kind of creep in. And when we first started in the industry, we're trying to maximize ourselves for the jobs or the opportunities, much like those in law enforcement, get in the police academy, or those that are going through boot camp, right? They're going through this process. But then once we've quote unquote made it, or we're inside, or we have the job, sometimes those disciplines start to kind of erode. And I know one of the biggest excuses is, I just don't have the time. What do you say to that? What's the counter for that?
Oh man, I hate to say it a lot, but that kind of sounds like a marriage.
Okay, I get it.
I just ain't got
I see the analogy.
The time memo. Yeah. If you love your job and you gotta, there's always somebody out there that may be able to do things a little bit better, a little bit longer. I don't want to be outshined by anybody. So I'm constantly, at the end of the day, you have to, what, my feet hurt real bad and my back is killing me. What can I do to kind of change some things?
Mm-hmm.
Is it me? Can I drop some weight? Maybe I'm flat. So that has a lot to do with, my stability, my balance, and my whole makeup as far as my structure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always looking at myself and speaking with other people within the industry. I look at some of the things that may hinder them and how they may want to make some changes to give them just a overall better feel when they're working. And I guess that's what I take. And another thing. I guess for me, I think we all have things that we do outside of the job, whether it's a hobby, whether it's something we do for fun. For me, this has always been a passion. For me, it's almost like a sickness. I have an addiction to just trying to find something new, trying to, help myself and help others. So, it's just always, so I'm always reading a book. I think I've picked up a concept, from one of the, Bill Gates. Bill Gates say, I want to get to reading 20 to 50 books a year. So my thing is I'm constantly in a book, I'm reading, and then I take the knowledge, what I've gained from that day, that week, and I'm applying it to either myself or, people within the industry or still my clients who are still trying. So
sure. Well, I mean, I can attest to that. I know you're always throwing something in the Protector app, and it's funny because, you'll drop a link and because you're dropping that link, I want to click on it because I want to, I want to see whatever this technique is or this school of thought is that someone's talking about. And, one of the things and Mark 6 James and myself have talked about it as it relates to you, you, like you mentioned, used to be a bodybuilder. And at some point, so you changed your muscle composition, right? And, and then tweaked it again. Is that right? To kind of make it more geared towards this industry where you want it to be functionally fit. Am I saying this right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
So I mean, that takes discipline, right? So that's when people say they don't have time. Well, is it that you don't have time or you don't have discipline?
Well, you are the business, if you can't work, that kind of, so you got to make the necessary changes in order to stay, up with the business. The business can change, your client can change, and maybe the client want to work out. Maybe the client have goals. Your goals, somewhat become their goals become your goals because they start running. You got to make sure you're able to keep up with your client. So I know for me, I was extremely heavy with a lot of muscle. So those long-standing days being, 5'11" at 265, that wasn't cutting it.
Okay, all right.
And then trying to fit in suits. I couldn't fit a suit. So, for me, just a nice, suit. I had to get that made, and that costs. And then you have clients that they don't want the big body anymore. They want you to be able to blend with everybody. So I could no longer look like the sort. I couldn't be the one sticking out. Well, that's the Protector right there. So close by must be the client. So I had to look at things differently and start looking within the industry as I learned and grew, and start to change my own self to fit the profile of a client.
So I think it's interesting because there is a school of thought, like you said, which actually got you into the industry, which is this bigger is better. I need a quote unquote bodyguard, so I'm gonna look for the biggest guy on the block. But you, who's somebody who was the biggest guy on the block, then sat back and reflected and said, okay, well, how do I increase my effectiveness, one, in the field, but also to open myself up for the maximum amount of opportunities. So, I think that was real strategic, and I commend that. So that was the physical piece, but I do know, again, listening to you and reading some of the things that you post about, that you also pay particular interest to the mental side of this as well, right? We talk about physical fitness, but that mental fitness is also a thing. Can you speak to that?
I think that there's an old saying, let me see if I can remember it correctly. A good tree can't bear bad fruit. So if you as the chassis is not right, really it would make a difference what you put in it. If you got a lot of, bad stuff mentally and emotionally and even spiritually going on. So, one of my mottos is peace and love. I try to reflect on all things that, give me peace, because I know, mentally, I have to, mentally, spiritually, there has to be a balance. And that also, transitions when it comes to working with the client, because they how you speak with them, how you speak to them, how you speak to others. You'll be surprised. They listen to when you speak to someone, are you courteous? Are you nice?
Sure.
And I think that peace and balance, helps reflect, the inner parts of you that comes out when you're around a client, or you may be around people within the inner workings of that client. So at the end of the day, one of the things that I've always been looked at, he's a very nice guy, very pleasant. He speak well mannered, and that's one of my big staples when it comes to obtaining clients, as far as the length, help. Even with Mark James, it's one of the things I've always, pushed is just be nice. And you can't be nice if, you're not nice to yourself, and the things that you surround yourself with aren't nice things. So
I think some might find it interesting that, that your motto, or one of your mottos, is peace and love, because, so many think of our profession as aggressive and alpha and, kill them all, let God sort them out, but here you are, someone who's doing the work in the industry, but you've got a slightly different perspective. But I think it's one that's, like you said, that you've become known for, that's helped you with your clients, that's helped you interact with other protectors, and you've gained a lot of respect for that.
Well, I think you can solve a lot of problems. And I think that's even a part of the verbal judo. You can communicate sometimes without talking, just your body language, how you position yourself, maybe a smile. But if you approach a situation or a person and they can read your body language, then they're automatically going to get defensive before you even open your mouth. So, there's a strategy to, just being nice, it can help in, so many different ways. So
absolutely.
And if it needs to go that way, hopefully, in this profession, you never have to, but the element of surprise is always nice too,
Right,
so
you've got that skill set too, is what you're saying, right?
You don't know it's coming, you get the smile, but what you may get, along with that, you might not like, but you can't guard yourself to it or know it's coming simply because I approach you being nice.
Sure. Mark calls that YouTube friendly,
Yes.
So, as they pick themselves off the floor. But, so that makes sense. And which will take me to my third part, which is the nutrition piece. So, we've got the physical fitness, and we've got the mental fitness and incorporating the right mindset here. But I think protectors too often neglect the nutrition piece. And again, there's a fallback, which is, we've got a busy lifestyle. We're always on the go, particularly those road warriors that spend a lot of time on planes. And that's one of the first things to kind of drop off. So they might hit the gym quite a bit, or, lift some weights, push some iron. But at the same time, they spend their times at McDonald's or Taco Bell and, whatever's convenient.
Oh, yeah. Well, I say that's almost like you got a real nice car. You got your C8 Corvette, but you put bad fuel. You get the cheapest oil and the cheapest gas. Your car's not going to run too well for too long. So
sure.
That's pretty much the same concept that I use. And in this industry, what I've noticed, because at times you're constantly on the go, you find yourself picking stuff. Those quick items, fast items,
right?
Because you're limited with time and your availability to actually sit down and have a good meal. So, I actually put up a video this morning, so maybe you and everybody else want to check it out. It's strictly talking about sugars. One of the most addictive properties known to man, sugars. So, given the actual breakdown, some of the things that we may grab a hold to when we're on the go. So. Nutrition is a very special thing of mine. I try not to get too deep. I guess the biggest thing is what we eat. Sometimes we can call it dead food. Sometimes we're hungry, and in being hungry, you will continue to eat as long as you're giving yourself dead calories. So if you have something that really doesn't have nutritional value, you're not filling the cells, which means you're going to continue to eat. You're going to continue to crave. once you give yourself good, clean food that actually has nutrients, your body is fulfilled. So therefore, the cravings of the hungers will stop. So that's,
So okay,
like
so if I'm relating this, I mean to cut you, but if I'm relating this to, our role as protectors, us out in the field, we've spent a long day operationally, and now we have, a couple minutes to grab a bite. You're saying it's not just, whatever's close by, eating it until you're not hungry anymore, right? Is it, you're saying that you have to be selective of what that is, because if not, you're kind of getting stuck on this loop where you're hungry again and you have to eat more. Am I getting that right? I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
That's correct. If I eat something that the body can't really obtain any nutrients from, you're going to continue to be hungry because the cells are not filled. So if I'm getting, and for some people, if I get a bar, let's say maybe something quick and fast, it could be a Snickers bar, even a protein bar, you may have limited benefit versus if I get this apple, this apple I'm gonna get 100% of the benefit of this raw apple because it has the nutrients to give me everything I need. So protein bar, apple.
Hey, brother, I know you got a couple people scratching their heads here. They
Now,
you suggest the apple, huh?
So you got to think. This is something I've all, and this is, it's to each his own. In my years of competing, my last year, I had a doctor talk to me, and he said, "Why do you eat so much protein?" And I said, "Well, doc, I got to stay big. Got to, hold on to this muscle, put on some more." He said, "Okay." He said, "Well, what do you eat?" I said, "Well, chicken, fish, steak, some egg whites." He said, "Well, let's take the steak." He said, "Well, a cow or a bull is much bigger than you'll ever be." I said, "You're correct. You're right." He said, "Why don't you just eat what the cow eat?" I got puzzled. Well, damn, they don't eat protein. He said, "Exactly. They don't eat protein. They eat grass." So he got me to look at, and he said, "Well, look at most of your animals, from a gorilla to hippopotamus. A lot of land animals that will always be bigger than a human and put on more muscle than you can ever. They don't take in protein either. They eat, for what we call the garden of the earth." So what he sat me down and explained to me is raw food has certain enzymes that actually will make muscle grow even faster than protein. And then he told me, "Say, you really don't like protein." Well, doc, I don't understand. I do like protein. I eat a lot of it. He said, "Well, do you eat it like a carnivore? Do you eat it wet, raw? You ever had some chicken or steak raw with no seasoning?" I said, "Well, no, doc." He said, "What do you put on it?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "What do you put on your meat?" He said, "Don't you still go back and put those same greens and vegetables that?" And I said, "You know what? You're right. Onions or peppers or." So I guess my biggest thing is, I'm always take somebody's knowledge and apply it to myself. And lo and behold, I slowly start cutting meats. And it wasn't because I got tired of eating meat. So I've been competing for so long, and I had to eat, at one point 2 to 3 pounds of beef a day. My body just got tired of this digested meat. So let me just try it. Plus, I had, helping people, I wanted to actually, kind of live a life of what they did. I have a client that couldn't process meat due to not having a gallbladder. And when you don't have a gallbladder, you can't break down fat. So when I actually slowly cut it, I actually enjoyed it. My body enjoyed it. A lot of meats, which people don't know at times, can create a lot of inflammation, and trying to break it down. And then it can, it can be a little cumbersome on your digestive system. If you're young, you can digest food real good. As you age, your body doesn't have the enzymes in the gut to help break down those items. And the older we get, the harder it gets to break down, these food items. So I'm not the youngest, person, but it becomes a little hard. So I like to eat more raw food now.
Okay. So, and I was going to take into my last question on the topic, which is, is this something that, you consider the proper or the ideal diet for a protector?
I wouldn't say an ideal diet. What I had to stop doing, especially with clients, is, well, here, there's a diet, eat like this. But what I learned over my years is everybody is unique, almost like a fingerprint. I got away from giving someone a diet. So Elijah, this is going to be your diet. This is how I want you to eat, because it might not work for you.
Sure.
What I had to do in hand is I had to turn around and watch people's diet based on how they ate. We, develop a food journal and see the reaction that you got from what you ate, week to week, month to month. When we didn't see any results in the mirror or on your scale, we'll start to tweak and change some things, with your meal plan. And normally I have the client, what do you want to eat? Okay, well, pick what you want to eat and let's see how your body reacts to it. Let's do pictures. Let's do, the numbers on the scale, which I kind of get away from. If you look good, you feel good, you like how you look. For those that are a little bit more advanced, I want to see abs. Well, a key point, when you can see abs, then you're in shape, if that's your goal. But I know for me, that's it. When I can't see abs, then I call myself out of shape. So that's one of the things I use for myself as a marker. So.
Got it. So my takeaway from that is, as it relates to us in protective services, just how we do the research on where we're taking a client and doing the events, and what this particular VIP is like, and what these particular threats that we might encounter, how to deal with those. We should be doing this research into our nutrition, the things that we're putting into our body, and in order to optimize ourselves so that we're effective in our job. Because if not, it's a bit of marketing hype.
For example, when we're talking about protein and any other foods, a lot of time, depending on the heat that you put to the food or the protein shakes or bars, once you add that element of heat, it kills a lot of the nutrients that's supposed to be in the food. So really, how much of the nutrients or protein are you getting from this food item? So we most definitely have to do our research and know what we're eating. Now, me being in the bodybuilding industry, I work with a lot of supplement companies. And, just in doing my own research, a lot of supplement companies, you got some that do work and you got a lot that don't work. So am I giving myself actual calories? Is it dead food? For myself, I can, always use myself and some clients. Always got the best results eating clean, uncooked food or lightly steamed. And that's what gave me my best results. So if I can get my hands on a salad with some greenery, maybe some, some tomatoes and carrots, and those things would work for me better and give me more energy versus me picking something up that's packaged and wrapped or is processed and in the body. It takes a little more for me to digest that. Now, here's the thing for me. If I can break it down quickly with no problem, because most raw food breaks itself down, it goes bad. Same thing it does in your system. At times, if I'm eating something, depending on what it is, and it's hard to break down, now I'm having issues to where I constantly may have an upset stomach. I got to go to the bathroom, which separates me from the client. And that's just for me. So if I'm on the go, on the road, I like to make sure I eat things that's still going to give me energy, but keep me in play, and it's not going to pull me away from the client.
I like that. I think your philosophy makes sense, particularly because you allow, or your recommendation is people to do what works for them. But if something's not working for you, figure out how to make the adjustment.
Yeah, don't
because I think too often, people keep doing the same thing, right?
Do the same thing, get the same results. So if you ain't getting no results and you've been eating the same diet for 5 months to 5 years, hey, in there somewhere, you look at yourself, should I look the same? Make some changes.
I love it, brother. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad we got a chance to chop it off on this. I know, you continue to give, great takeaways, in the NABA Protector app. One of the things that I don't remember if it was in the app or on a call. No, it was on a call, and we talked about, I do a lot of supplements and I do protein shakes. And I remember you told a story about you consuming quite a bit of protein shakes, and your wife got tired of cleaning out those containers of those mixes, right? But one of the things you said was you said, once you started cleaning them out, you realized all the gunk that was stuck to the side of, the side of the blender. And that's something that I realized. But, what did you say after that, though?
Well, I don't remember all of the comments as far as what I said, but that's something I use often as far as, protein shakes. And you look at, it's just like if you ever done some plumbing and you take a pipe apart and you see all the stuff that's caught around the pipe, it can wreak havoc on your system when it comes to you digesting food and being able to work things through your system as far as you being able to process, break down. So that's one of the reasons I stopped doing protein shakes. I get it from my food. Let my food be my sword.
Yeah, and you said, you know, pretty much that, and that was a big takeaway. And you know, again, using the plumbing analogy, and I thought about it particularly because, you know, daily I'm cleaning out that blender, and it made a lot of sense. So I say that all to say is that, you know, again, there's a reason I kind of call you the fitness and nutrition guru.
Thank you for that,
and I appreciate your contributions to the industry and just sharing some things that you've learned and, you know, things that you've experienced, because I think that's the best way in terms of, you know, I call it real world versus textbook, you know. So you could say, hey, I've done this. I've been in these situations, or I've tried these techniques, but I could also articulate what works and what doesn't for me, but I could kind of tell you why it may or may not work for you. So Levar, thank you much for your time, brother, and I'll catch up with you real soon.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.